Hello, my name is Catherine, and I'm reading you the first part of chapter 4 from the book The Power of Positive Thinking. Chapter 4, Try Prayer Power. In a business office, high above the city streets, two men were having a serious conversation. One, heavily troubled by a business and personal crisis, paced the floor restlessly, then sat dejectedly, head in hand, a picture of despair. He had come to the other for advice, since he was considered a man of great understanding. Together, they had explored the problem from every angle, but seemingly without results, which only served to deepen the troubled man's discouragement. I guess no power on earth can save me, he sighed. The other reflected for a moment, then spoke rather diffidently. I wouldn't look at it that way. I believe you are wrong in saying there is no power that can save you. Personally, I have found that there is an answer to every problem. There is a power that can help you. Then, slowly, he asked, why not try prayer power? Somewhat surprised, the discouraged man said, of course I believe in prayer, but perhaps I do not know how to pray. You speak of it as something practical that fits a business problem. I never thought of it that way, but I'm willing to try prayer if you will show me how. He did apply practical prayer techniques and in due course got his answer. Matters ultimately turned out satisfactorily. That is not to say he did not have difficulties. In fact, he had rather a hard time of it, but ultimately he worked out of this trouble. Now he believes in prayer power so enthusiastically that I recently heard him say, every problem can be solved and solved right if you pray. Experts in physical health and well-being often utilize prayer in their therapy. Disability, tension, and kindred troubles may result from a lack of inner harmony. It is remarkable how prayer restores the harmonious functioning of body and soul. A friend of mine, a physiotherapist, told a nervous man to whom he was giving a massage, God works through my fingers as I seek to relax your physical body, which is the temple of your soul. While I work on your outward being, I want you to pray for God's relaxation inwardly. It was a new idea to the patient, but he happened to be in a receptive mood and he tried passing some peace thoughts through his mind. He was amazed at the relaxing effect this had on him. Jack Smith, operator of a health club, which is patronized by many outstanding people, believes in the therapy of prayer and uses it. He was at one time a prize fighter, then a truck driver, later a taxi driver, and finally opened his health club. He says that while he probes his patrons for physical flabbiness, he also probes for spiritual flabbiness because, he declares, you can't get a man physically healthy until you get him spiritually healthy. One day, Walter Houston, the actor, sat by Jack Smith's desk. He noted a big sign on the wall on which were penciled the following letters: A P R P B W P R A A. In surprise, Houston asked, what do those letters mean? Smith laughed and said, They stand for affirmative prayers release powers by which positive results are accomplished. I'm repeating. Affirmative prayers release powers by which positive results are accomplished. Houston's jaw dropped in astonishment. Well, I never expected to hear anything like that in a health club. I use methods like that, said Smith, to make people curious so they will ask what those letters mean. That gives me an opportunity to tell them that I believe affirmative prayers always get results. Jack Smith, who helps men to get physically fit, believes that prayer is as important, if not more important, than exercise, steam baths, and a rub down. It is a vital part of the power releasing process. People are doing more praying today than formerly because they find that it adds to personal efficiency. Prayer helps them to tap forces and to utilize strength not otherwise available. A famous psychologist says, prayer is the greatest power available to the individual in solving his problems. Its power astonishes me. Prayer power is a manifestation of energy. Just as there exist scientific techniques for the release of atomic energy, so are there scientific procedures for the release of spiritual energy through the mechanism of prayer. Exciting demonstrations of this energizing force are evident. Prayer power seems able to even to normalize the aging process, obviating or limiting infirmity and deterioration. You need not lose your basic energy or vital power or become weak and listless merely as a result of accumulating years. It is not necessary to allow your spirit to sag or grow stale or dull. Prayer can freshen you up every evening and send you out renewed each morning. You can receive guidance in problems if prayer is allowed and to permeate your consciousness, to permeate your subconscious, the seat of the forces which determines whether you take right or wrong actions. Prayer has the power to keep your reactions correct and sound. Prayer, driven deeply into your subconscious, can remake you. It releases and keeps power flowing freely. If you have not experienced this power, perhaps you need to learn new techniques of prayer. It is well to study prayer from an efficiency point of view. Usually, the emphasis is entirely religious, though no cleavage exists between the two concepts. Scientific spiritual practice rules out stereotyped procedure, even as it does in general science. If you have been praying in a certain manner, even if it has brought you blessings, which it doubtless has, perhaps you can pray even more profitably by varying the pattern and by experimenting with fresh prayer formulas. Get new insights, practice new skills to attain greatest results. It is important to realize that you are dealing with the most tremendous power in the world when you pray. You would not use an old-fashioned kerosene lamp for illumination. You want the most up-to-date lighting devices. New and fresh spiritual techniques are being constantly discovered by men and women of spiritual genius. It is advisable to experiment with prayer power according to such methods as prove sound and effective. If this sounds new and strangely scientific, Bear in mind that the secret of prayer is to find the process that will most effectively open your mind humbly to process that will most humbly to God. Any method through which you can stimulate the power of God to flow into your mind is legitimate and usable. An illustration of a scientific use of prayer is the experience of two famous industrialists, whose names would be known to many readers were I permitted to mention them, who had a conference about a business and technical matter. One might think that these men would approach such a problem on a purely technical basis, and that they did that and more. They also prayed about it. But they did not get a successful result. Therefore, they called in a country preacher, an old friend of one of them, because, as they explained, the Bible prayer formula is where two or three are gathered together in my name, there am I in the midst of them. They also pointed to a further formula, namely, if two of you shall agree on earth as touching anything that they shall ask, it shall be done for them of my Father which is in heaven. Being schooled in scientific practice, they believe that in dealing with prayer as a phenomenon, they should scrupulously follow the formulas outlined in the Bible, which they described as the textbook of spiritual science. The proper method for employing a science is to use the accepted formulas outlined in the textbooks of that science. They reasoned that if the Bible provides that two or three should be gathered together, perhaps the reason they were not succeeding was that they needed a third party. Therefore, three men prayed, and to guard against error in the process, they also brought to bear on the problem various other biblical techniques, such as those suggested in the statements. According to your faith, be it unto you. What things soever ye desire, when ye pray, believe that ye receive them, and ye shall have them. After several thorough-going sessions of prayer, the three men together affirmed that they had received the answer. The outcome was entirely satisfactory. Subsequent results indicated that divine guidance was actually obtained. These men are great enough scientists not to require precise explanation of the operation of these spiritual laws any more than in the case of naturalistic laws, but are content with the fact that the law does operate when proper techniques are employed. While we cannot explain it, they said, the fact remains that we were baffled by our problem and we tried prayer according to the formulas in the New Testament. That method worked and we got a beautiful result. They did add that it seemed to them that faith and harmony are important factors in the prayer process. A man opened a small business in New York City a number of years ago. His first establishment His first establishment being, as he characterized it, a little hole in the wall. He had one employee. In a few years they moved into a larger room and then into extensive quarters. It became a very successful operation. The man's method of business as he described it was to fill the little hole in the wall with optimistic prayers and thoughts. He declared that hard work, positive thinking, fair dealing, right treatment of people, and the proper kind of praying always gets results. This man, who has a creative and unique mind, worked out his own simple formula for solving his problems and overcoming his difficulties through prayer power. It is a curious formula, and I have practiced it and personally know that it works. I have suggested it to many people who also found real value in its use. It is recommended to you. The formula is prayerize, picturize, and actualize. I'm repeating prayerize, picturize, and actualize. By prayerize, my friend meant a daily system of creative prayer. When a problem arose, he talked it over with God, very simply and directly in prayer. Moreover, he did not talk with God as to some vast and far off shadowy being, but conceived of God as being with him in his office, in his home, on the street, in his automobile, always near by, as a partner, as a close associate. He took seriously the biblical injunction to pray without ceasing. He interpreted it as meaning that he should go about every day discussing with God in a natural, normal manner the questions that had to be decided and dealt with. The presence came finally to dominate his conscious and ultimately his unconscious thinking. He prayerized his daily life. He prayed as he walked or drove his car or performed everyday activities. He filled his life full of prayer. That is, he lived by prayer. He did not often kneel to offer his prayers, but would, for example, say to God, as to a close associate, "What will I do about this, Lord?" Or, "Give me a fresh insight on this, Lord." He prayerized his mind and so prayerized his activities. The second point in his formula of creative prayer is to picturize. The basic factor in physics is force. The basic factor in psychology is the realizable wish. The man who assumes success tends already to have success. People who assume failure tend to have failure. When either failure or success is picturized, it strongly tends to actualize in terms equivalent to the mental image pictured. To assure something worthwhile happening, first pray about it and test it according to God's will. Then print a picture of it in your mind as happening, holding the picture firmly in your consciousness. Continue to surrender the picture to God's will. That is to say, put the matter in God's hands and follow God's guidance. Work hard and intelligently, thus doing your part to achieve success in the matter. Practice believing and continue to hold the picturization firmly in your thoughts. Do this and you will be astonished at the strange way in which the picturization comes to pass. In this manner, the picture actualizes. That which you have prayerized and picturized actualizes according to the pattern of your basic realizable wish when conditioned by invoking God's power upon it. And if, moreover, you give fully of yourself to its realization. I have personally practiced this 3 point prayer method and found great power in it. It has been suggested to others who have likewise reported that it released creative powers into their experience. For example, a woman discovered that her husband was drifting from her. Theirs had been a happy marriage, but the wife had become preoccupied in social affairs and the husband had gotten busy in his work. Before they knew it, the close, old time companionship was lost. One day she discovered his interest in another woman. She lost her head and became hysterical. She consulted her minister, who adroitly turned the conversation to herself. She admitted being a careless homemaker, and that she had also become self centered, sharp tongued, and nagging. She then confessed that she had never felt herself the equal of her husband. She had a profound sense of inferiority regarding him, feeling unable to maintain equality with him socially and intellectually. So she retreated into an antagonistic attitude that manifested itself in petulance and criticism. The minister saw that the woman had more talent, ability, and charm than she was revealing. He suggested that she create an image or picture of herself as capable and attractive. He whimsically told her that God runs a beauty parlor and that faith techniques could put beauty on a person's face and charm and ease in her manner. He gave her instructions in how to pray and how spiritually to picturize. He also advised her to hold a mental image of the restoration of the old time companionship, to visualize the goodness in her husband, and to picture restored harmony between the two of them. She was to hold this picture with faith. In this manner, he prepared her for a most interesting personal victory. About this time, her husband informed her that he wanted a divorce. She had conquered herself to the extent of being able to receive this request with calmness. She simply replied that she was willing if he wanted it, but suggested a deferral of the decision for 90 days on the ground that divorce is so final. If at the end of 90 days you still feel that you want a divorce, I will cooperate with you. She said this calmly. He gave her a quizzical look, for he had expected an outburst. Night after night he went out, and night after night she sat at home. But she pictured him as seated in his old chair. He was not in the chair, but she painted an image of him there, comfortably reading as in the old days. She visualized him pottering around the house, painting and fixing things as he had formerly done. She even pictured him drying the dishes as he did when they were first married. She visualized the two of them playing golf together and taking hikes as they once did. She maintained this picture with steady faith, and one night there he actually sat in his old chair. She looked twice to be sure that it was the reality rather than the picturization. But perhaps a picturization is a reality, for at any rate the actual man was there. Occasionally he would be gone, but more and more nights he sat in his chair. Then he began to read to her as in the old days. Then one sunny Saturday afternoon he asked, "What do you say to a game of golf?" The days went by pleasantly until she realized that the 90th day had arrived. So that evening she said quietly, "Bill, this is the 90th day." "What do you mean?" he asked, puzzled. "The 90th day? Why, don't you remember? We agreed to wait 90 days to settle that divorce matter, and this is the day." He looked at her for a moment, then, hidden behind his paper, turned a page, saying, "Don't be silly. I couldn't possibly get along without you. Where did you even get the idea I was going to leave you?" The formula proved a powerful mechanism. She prayerized and she picturized, and the sought for result was actualized. Prayer power solved her problem and his as well. I have known many people who have successfully applied this technique not only to personal affairs, but to business matters as well. When sincerely and intelligently brought into situations, the results have been so excellent that this must be regarded as an extraordinarily efficient method of prayer. People who take this method seriously and actually use it get astonishing results. At an industrial convention banquet, I was seated at the speaker's table next to a man who, though a bit on the rough side, was very likable. He may have felt a bit cramped by his proximity to a preacher, which obviously wasn't his usual company. During the dinner, he used a number of the theological words, but they were not put together in the theological manner. After after each outburst, he apologized, but I advised him that I had heard all these words before. He told me he had been a church attendant as a boy, but had gotten away from it. He gave me that old story which I have heard all of my life and which even now people will get off as something entirely new, which is, when I was a boy, my father made me go to Sunday school and church and crammed religion down my throat. So, when I got away from home, I couldn't take it anymore and have seldom been to church since. This man then observed that perhaps he should start going to church since he was getting old. I commented that he would be lucky to find a seat. This surprised him, for he did not think anybody went to church anymore. I told him that many people attend church each week than frequent any other institution in the country. This rather bowled him over. He was a man of a medium-sized business, and he fell to telling me how much money his firm took in last year. I told him I knew quite a few churches whose take exceeded that. So I'm going to stop here for today. Have a lovely day, and I hope you found that interesting.